ASU GSV's Education Innovation Summit. I'm Dr. Rod Berger with the Core of Education at American Ed TV, and standing next to Trip Hawkins, who obviously so many of you know from being the founder of EA and creatively behind EA Sports, and the co-founder and CEO of If You Can. It's great to meet you, Trip.
That's great to be here, thank you.
Well, obviously I want to talk with you about your diverse background in gaming and really working with youth, really, right? And finding ways for them to engage with really that's what EA and EA Sports has done for so many years, including myself. Talk with us though, because I'm so fascinated with If You Can. Let's start with that. And the role social emotional learning is playing in sort of Trip Hawkins 2.0 now.
Yeah, well, it really is exactly what you just said, because the first version of me was a kid that discovered the learning power of games and the power of simulation, and my hobbies were sports, my heroes were athletes, and so I applied that to making video games that were really authentic sports games. That's what I really wanted to do, because I wanted to play those games. So it was really a tremendous personal passion for myself as a gamer, as a kid. And now, after having spent the first 20 years of my career focused on making EA Sports games like Giant Madden Football, now I've been a parent for 20 years. I had 2 boys and 2 girls. I've pretty much had a market research lab
right there at home,
with kids for quite a long time. And I've been in the parent communities, the teacher communities, and around a lot of kids, and have come to understand what a tremendous need there is for this knowledge of what's now known as SEL, social and emotional learning, and figured out that I can basically organize a team of experts the same way I did with Giant Madden Football. And if you think about that, you had John Madden, he's an expert at football, right? And then you've also got the NFL plays. It's a form of content, and you've got players and statistics, you've got the rule book, you've got the look and feel on television. So these are all things that have to be in there just exactly the right way. It's the same way with teaching. So if you're trying to help someone learn anything, it's got to be just as much fun as Madden Football, because otherwise you're not going to hold their attention and motivate them. And that's what's really powerful about games as a mode of learning, because you have to meet people where they're at. And where are the kids right now? They got their nose in a phone or a tablet or a computer, and they're playing games. So that's where they're bringing their attention and motivation. If you can tie into that with really, really fun gameplay, and you can bring in legitimate curriculum, and you have ways of measuring it to prove that things are being learned, you've really got something. And we're doing that with SEL, but this is a bigger idea than just SEL.
Tell me what a kid experiences that is, starting to play a game within that model and with If You Can. So what is the experience like for a child that you're going for?
So we're aiming initially for boys and girls that are 6 to 12 years old. Now, if they're much younger than that, they're not reading yet, and they're not dealing with school climate issues. If they're older than that, they're teenagers doing their own thing. And we think there's something special about the preteens in between. And these are kids that are early readers. So a product like ours that looks and feels like an interactive animated Pixar movie and has these fantastic characters talking to you, and you're seeing what they're saying while they're talking it. So it's kind of reinforcing early reading. And they're creating these powerful emotional situations between characters. And we're talking about kids in the 6 to 12 age range that have a lot of issues around school climate, because maybe they've just left the cocoon of the home and they're dealing with bullying and a bunch of classroom rules around group behavior for the first time. Maybe they're a little older and they're just dealing with puberty and middle school social pressure. So there's interesting things going on in that fabric. And there are big challenges today with the amount of cyberbullying that's going on. We hear about cyberbullying cases from school superintendents saying that kids that are as young as 8 and 9 years old are in these online environments being cyberbullied. I think almost every kid is feeling bullied these days. And of course, school climate is very, very challenging. And basically this is a set of skills with SEL that everybody needs to know, that back in the old days, you would have learned these things just from hanging around your parents while you were growing up, because you're all part of the same tribe and you're hunting and gathering together.
Times have changed.
They really have, and we live in a very complicated world. The rules of citizenship are pretty complicated, and how to manage yourself, and SEL is basically how am I managing my emotions? How aware am I, and how am I regulating my expression? What am I doing to build positive relationships? Am I making really healthy decisions? It's getting you to be kind of aware and mindful about all those things. So these are really valuable human skills.
So let's go to the I say the ugly side, but let's go to the business side of it, Trip. And one of the things that we hear in education technology is finding appropriate funding, creating a narrative that says this is valuable to an entity or to a vertical that's not used to paying for new things because they've just been sort of traditional in their approaches, maybe we'll say. How have you approached that so that they see the value in it, and really who is If You Can's customer that's going to find your offering?
I think this is a classic case of disruption because we're doing things that are innovative that haven't been done before. So of course in an institutional setting, particularly a setting like after-school programming where students need to have the ability to do things independently, or a schoolroom and classroom environment where there's a cart of tablets that goes around from room to room, and again, they're doing independent activities on them. We fit really well into a model like that because we've built this epic storyline with, it's a storyline that, like Star Wars, uses the Joseph Campbell hero's journey, which you can boil down into 17 steps from mythology that all ancient myths have followed since time began. And it's a very proven way to make sure you're telling a good story. And in our case, we frame it in this world of dogs and cats that everybody can relate to. And you can present really complex human issues like racism, even in the context of dogs and cats, and make it easier for people to deal with it. So there's a rich platform there. And we want to start on the consumer side because we think that if you talk about people that really care about education on the consumer side, companies like us, we need sources of revenue, and parents that really care about this can afford to pay for it, and they're the ones likely to tell their friends about it. And we think that we have a shot at becoming a much more viral phenomenon because it's worth talking about, and it's kind of a news story. There's a bunch of issues that people care about right now. This is a product that resolves those issues. It even also resolves a bonus issue, because in the consumer market, parents are now concerned that their kids are addicted to mobile devices and they're wasting a lot of time on things that are pointless. So we come along and say, hey, not only are we doing something that your child needs, but we're taking time away from Angry Birds and other pointless games.
What has it been like? I mean, given the breadth of your career, when we think about gaming, when it first came into education, right, skeptics said, well, there's no educational value to it. But then you had well-intentioned folks who said, no, wait a minute, we're building in curriculum, we're building these pieces in, but always having to fight that wave of criticism.
I think the challenge here is that a great educational game, it could either come from the educational and academic community or from the game community. Well, it didn't come from the game community because it's a bunch of young men that want to make games they want to play, just like me back in the day. Now, on the educational side, a lot of passionate interest and a tremendous knowledge about learning and curriculum and assessment. But these are generally not people that know how to compete with Steven Spielberg on how to make a fun movie, or how to compete with the most elite game developers about how to make a fun video game. And of course, video games involve a lot of technology skills as well. So generally, those products haven't scaled. They haven't kind of taken over the world. I would say this revolution, this disruption that we can be part of is products that have three components. So they have to be addressing curriculum that the government cares about, that therefore teachers and parents are going to care about. There's got to be a legitimate method of assessment so learning is occurring. And third, we believe the foundation of it has to be a fun game so that you get the attention and have the player motivated and keep them engaged. And that's the part that I think has been the missing ingredient in the industry so far. So we're now starting to see the emergence not just of ourselves with IF, but also SimCity EDU, Dragonbox, which is a math game series. So there are starting to be more products that are operating on these same principles, or other examples that I think are very positive, like Minecraft EDU.
And hopefully competition will help to bring the top offerings to the surface for the students,
yes.
Right?
And I think if there's enough innovative products of this type, then institutions of learning will begin to think that, okay, this is the future. I mean, they're not going to change everything they do just for one game.
Yeah. So Trip, let's close with this. So obviously, there's so many things that went through my mind just with your background, because it was a part of my childhood to be able to interact with the things that you've built. Let's sort of transition that to teachers. It's been really interesting to talk with people here at the summit and find out who was that one voice in school that they had growing up that, looking back now retrospectively, you say, that might have been one of the initial seeds that was planted in me that said, I can have the confidence to go out and build something nobody's ever heard about. That in 20 years they'll say, absolutely, I know about Madden football and these other things, right? Who was that one person maybe from the school side that said to a young Trip Hawkins, I believe in you, you can do the things that you want to do?
I think it's really important to have heroes. And I have hundreds of heroes. I mean, if we had time, I could literally start naming heroes, and I would keep going until the list had 200 on it. And I have heroes that are from fiction. I have heroes that are human beings that lived in the old days. Heroes that are human beings that are alive today that I only know through their work. Humans that I have known personally. So yes, I've had a number of mentors, and there were certainly particular teachers when I was a kid that could tell I was different, and that didn't just try to crush all of that out of me. But honestly, frankly, most creative people, yourself included, I'm sure, are trying to discourage people from being creative, and they want you to get to do things that are predictable and secure, and that you're probably told, for example, to maybe become a doctor or an accountant.
I heard that a time or two.
So, for whatever it's worth, I had this little voice in my own head about what I really should be doing, and it was never that demotivating. I thought it was kind of funny that everyone was so motivated to tell me not to do what I cared about. For example, when I was in college at Harvard, one of the professors said, Mr. Hawkins, you need to stop wasting your time monkeying around with games. And it's funny because I ended up doing a special field of study there with an expert in game theory who later won a Nobel Prize. So for me, it was kind of vindication when, okay, finally, now somebody involved in games wins a Nobel Prize. Right. They're starting to pay attention.
That's really great. Well, it's been a pleasure to meet you, Trip, and all the best with If You Can. It would be fun to track that progress. Big believer in the social emotional learning.
You can try it for free right now. Right now on the iPad, it's just called IF.
IF, wonderful. Well, people hope they go to that and follow your work and follow the interviews here at ASU GSV Education Innovation Summit. Once again, I'm Dr. Rod Berger with the Core of Education and American Ed TV, because education matters.